Have you ever noticed how Diablo 4 players seem to be constantly unhappy, while Path of Exile players are seemingly just enjoying themselves with the game they have, especially being ultra excited for Path of Exile 2, while there's a rumor that Diablo 4 is getting a $100 expansion and everyone is losing their marbles? In this video, we're going to go down on the 3 main reasons what makes Diablo 4 players so unhappy and why Path of Exile players keep hyping their game. Let's start with the biggest one, and also the most important thing in every ARPG ever, the loot. Because this is what it's all about, getting powerful items, upgrading your character, rising to godhood, essentially smashing everything into pieces as you complete your build. We'll begin with the bad and Diablo 4, because loot in that game is nothing but frustrating, and that is on many levels, to be fair. This separates in items itself, aspects, and then also the unique items on top of it. First, the actual items. They all have in the end game 4 different affixes. Of these 4 different affixes, you'll have to hope that 3 are rolling good. And then the 4th you could change, which might cost you up to 50 million money to maybe get it to the point where you want it to be. But not only do you have to have the 3 right affixes and then roll the 4th one to maybe get lucky, they also need to be in the exact range. So it could be 24% total armor. It could also be 29% total armor. Now, if you're lucky to find this item and all of it perfectly fits together, that's not the end of it, because there's also item power, which is the maximum at 925. For defensive items, that would be the maximum amount of armor, but for offensive items, that's also the maximum amount of damage. So in the end game, the only weapons that matter are weapons that drop at 925. Everything below is not worth it, since all your damage is basically being calculated with the base damage of your weapon, which is the highest at the highest item power. Rewinding that, you'll need to find the highest item power, the 3 right affixes that are also the maximum high roll possible, plus then, well, be lucky to roll the 4th thing that you actually need. Now, that wouldn't all be a problem if 925 items would actually drop everywhere in the game. Loot drops plenty in Diablo. The problem is that even the highest tier of dungeon, tier 100, and the Abattoir of Zir, which is the new endgame content, they don't regularly drop 925 gear. So I'm going through a tier 100 dungeon, I'll drop 40 pieces of gear. And I will not pick up a single one of them because they drop from a range of 832 to 925. Which makes me, even if I pick up every single item, potentially have to teleport once back to town to scrounge through my items, to go back into the dungeon, to then keep doing the dungeon, to then get more items that are anyways not 925. Frustration. You don't even want to pick them up anymore because you're so annoyed by the multitude of affixes that are useless, by not hitting the 3 right ones correctly, and then by not even being these 925 items. Now there's a solution. You could do Duriel. He's a uber boss that actually drops also uber uniques and normal uniques on every kill. Well, in order to get to Duriel, you'll need to engage into a Hell Tide, which is going to be an every hour activity. Yep, it's not even there all the time, every hour activity, which changes in season 3 luckily. And then you also need to do Tree of Whisper quests to kill Mr. Varshan, who's also an uber boss, to then have the materials to do uber Duriel, who then will drop 925 items that could have the 3 affixes, when you could then roll the 4th one. If anything in this gameplay loop does not yell convoluted, complicated, and frustrating to you, then, well, we'll need to talk about your mindset. Now, the interesting part is, yes, Duriel could also drop an uber unique, and technically that uber unique would drop every 50 Duriel tries, which anyways takes a copious amount of farm or you to invest real money to buy materials. These uber uniques, the absolute endgame super duper items that you cannot trade, by the way. So if you get one you don't want, you're kind of stuck with it. You make a new character, so no trading, okay? But these uber uniques might drop every 50th Duriel. Then again, I got my first one after 100 and my second one after another 100. And I have a friend who didn't get a single one in 300 tries. Now you're saying 300 tries sounds a lot. There's people that have been doing thousands, if not 2,000 Duriel tries to get all their uber uniques. Yikes. Now this is only the first level of things, because now your items can also have aspects. But these aspects also go from a low roll to a high roll. Some of them can be had from the Codex of Power, automatically enchanted on your items, and they'll be the lowest roll possible, but at least you get them. And there are other aspects you can simply not get from the Codex of Power, you have to find in the world. And if you find them, you want them as a max roll, but if you have them as a max roll, you can essentially enchant them one single time. You then find a better item. You have to find the same aspect again in a max roll, hopefully, to then enchant it again one single time. So every time you find a new item, first you need to actually have a good new aspect to then put on the new item to make it even worth it to use that new item. Otherwise, you're going to go for a lower aspect and lose a lot of damage. So you're essentially getting punished for finding better items because there's no system in place that allows you to, well, always have the max roll aspects. Ain't that beautiful? And what's Path of Exile doing so much better, or even so much simpler, that loot is that much more desirable in the game. And the first thing that pops up is loot filters. Imagine playing a witch and you would activate a loot filter and say, I only would like to see items that are for witch. And all the other items and clutter that you don't want are simply never appearing. Instead of dropping 200 items per hour, you'll only drop 50 items per hour. But these 50 items are items that you could potentially need. That means in total, you're seeing lesser drops, but every drop you see is something potentially desirable, which makes the whole looting process go from frustration to fun, since you only see what matters, and all the shit is just simply not appearing on your screen anymore. Now, you remember how I said you can reroll one single stat on a Diablo item, and you can change the aspect, right? The amount of change you can actually bring to Path of Exile items is silly. I mean, first you have your skill gems in here, right? These are my skills, and this is a level 19 zombie. So if I do find another chest piece though now, I can just pull out all my skills, which are all going to stay the same level as they are. Then I'll equip the next better chest piece that could potentially be better, that I traded for, that I've gotten that has a higher quality. And then I put my high level gems back in. So no like being punished for essentially simply finding a new item. No, I can finally, yeah, just keep using my stuff and keep playing with my things. Not the only thing though you can do. I can make a complete normal item into a rare item. I can make a magic item, a blue one, also into a rare item. I can change magic items modifiers randomly. With a jeweler's orb, I can change the number of sockets, so that is also possible. And yes, I can even alter the amount of links that an item has as well. This one is a 2-2 connection. Well, I could make it a 4-link item if I wanted to. And yes, you guessed right. With a chromatic orb, I can even change the colors of the sockets. Therefore, if I find a 4-link item, I have all the opportunities in front of me to somehow try to bend this into a shape I want or need this to be in. Obviously, this is all random, still random, that doesn't change. The amount of control that this gives you, paired well with the interchangeability of your gems and not having to refine new stupid aspects every single time, truly makes the itemization experience in Path of Exile fantastic. And worst case scenario, if you really can't find the item you're looking for, there's always the option to go for the Path of Exile trade and just exactly get the items that your build needs to work. If I'm lacking an aspect in Diablo 4, I have to find it. I could spend 2 weeks looking and searching for it and never find the respective aspect because it simply just won't drop. Pain. Not fun, pain. Because who wants to search 2 weeks for the one item that makes your build work? It has nothing to do with instant gratification or just wanting everything handed to you, and everything something to do with control over your journey as the player. The second big point being features, endgame, content, everything kind of wrapped up together. A brand new feature that Diablo 4 released with a renown system and altars of Lilith. The renown system looked interesting in the beginning. You do quests, you do dungeons, you do something for the area essentially. You get your renown, and that renown gives you bonus rewards. Gold, potion slots, skill points, and paragon points. That was cool for the first time playing through the game and the story. And there were these altars of Lilith, hundreds, strewn throughout the whole map, and you tap them, and you get passive, permanent buffs to your intelligence, strength, dexterity, and so on. Now, also doing that once is something, because there's like hundreds of them, right? And then Blizzard had this genius idea to tell you that you're gonna have to do this every single season again. A silly grind, that you could do alongside the main mission as you did the main mission the first time you play through the game. They wanted to force up on you really every single season again. Something that has nothing to do with actually making your character the max level and engaging into the end game. They were trying to tangle you maximum retention over the map. This was merely not a feature that made the game better. It was a simple retention mechanic to keep you playing. That, my friends, is not a good feature. Now, not everything is doom and gloom. We did actually have challenging nightmare dungeons, tier 100 nightmare dungeons that you could grind towards to and then try to beat. And in the very beginning of the game, they were actually really challenging, to be fair. But people complained that they couldn't actually beat them, and they were kind of like, this is overtuned and this is scary, so now they're not challenging anymore. Which means that the actual endgame content, the hard stuff for the hard gamers to try out, was now casual content for the casual gamers, and there was nothing left, right? I mean, we got the Endurio, which we talked about, that you could mindlessly throw your head at it and do it 300 times over, but it's not actually fun to do that because it was just a mindless grind to maybe be lucky enough to get an item. The fight wasn't challenging or fun in any way. It was just run in, kill, maybe loot, run in, kill, maybe loot, reset dungeon, loop. I mean, that's work. That's not gaming. That's work. The same kind of went down to the Abattoir of Zir, which was the latest installation of an endgame dungeon, where you get a brand new, unique glyph for your Paragon board, which multiplicative boosts all your damage, while you're then fighting through these Abattoir of Zir dungeons, which are time-gated challenger dungeons that have a challenging boss fight at the end with 3 Bloodseekers coming overwhelming you, which brought their own problems because the elemental affixes they had could just blast you into smithereens and some execution bugs and other shenanigans. But this dungeon essentially introduced a gameplay loop of you play for 5 to 10 minutes to beat one, to then get a marginal amount of XP to maybe push this Tears of Blood glyph higher, to then be able to do higher iterations of the dungeon, where not even 925 gear drops. Yes, there's 4 gear drops at the end of the dungeon, and that loot could be anything from 832 to maybe 925. And then it also had to have the 4 right affixes and the 4 right max rolls, and you get the drift, right? So there was no reward for the time you kind of put in, apart from bragging rights in the internet, and a title. There wasn't even a mount, there wasn't even a skin, there's not even a border frame around your portrait displaying that you put in this work. No, we're talking about having to put in hundreds of hours to level up your glyph to a remote level that you're then able to keep doing the same thing. Yes, there's not a new thing. You're not doing this to reach a certain boss, a unique, cool boss fight. You're doing the same thing to do the same thing that just gets harder in terms of enemies have more life. No, enemies don't do more damage. At some point, they only have more life. And then you just keep hitting your head against the wall until you just do hate the game in every single aspect. Whereas the endgame in Path of Exile is quite something intriguing for me to look at, because you have all these different maps that you're going through. But you're not simply just doing nightmare dungeon spam, map spam. No, you're doing these maps to essentially reach certain key points, certain bosses, fighting your way to the middle of the map to then have the ultimate challenge waiting for you. So there's some overbearing goal that you're aiming for. In Diablo 4, you could say there is Uber Lilith as kind of like the pinnacle challenge. The problem is you can already kill her at level 19, 92, depending on how OP your build is. That means the last late levels to level 100 are completely useless and you don't actually have to do them. And again, the Abattoir of Zir, you just have minions that have more HP, and then they have more HP, and then have more HP, and it's always the same. So you're not even trying to achieve anything, trying to get to a certain point where you have to execute a set of actions to actually get to that point. There's no meaning to it, to be fair. And that is where Path of Exile gives you a mission. Your Your mission is, I want to play the season. I want to beat the season by reaching the mapping stage. And then in the mapping stage, actually playing through the whole map to reach the center to get these respective amazing boss fights that you're looking for. There is a start and there is also technically an end. For Diablo 4, we have level 0 and level 100. And if you're level 100 and you killed Uber Lilith and cleared a tier 100 dungeon, then you technically achieved everything there is to achieve. And there's nothing more to go for. That's the end point already. Yes, you could say Diablo 4 launched fundamentally flawed. And a lot of these flaws could have been fixed by just having a longer beta testing phase of giving people a chance to give it another half a year and have some tests happening that we can implement some more features the game can actually launch with. Because if there's a lack of features and the existing systems are frustrating, that pairs together to a game that is still fun to play. But every single time you're playing it, you're reaching a point of this and that, and this could be better and that could be better. And you're kind of compromising with yourself. You're enjoying the game, but you know what is hardcore lacking. Now, with a look in the future, you know that there's a new expansion coming for Diablo, which promises a new class so far. But opposed to that, there's also Path of Exile 2 coming, which literally promises to revolutionize Path of Exile that is currently there, with the way how abilities and skills interact with each other. I have seen videos behind the scenes and other shenanigans at Gamescom where essentially the druid is casting its abilities like a normal whirlwind, but then it's also using a fire ability, and suddenly the normal whirlwind turns into a fire whirlwind, which is something crazy in an ARPG. If your existing skills you're using can actually synergize in a visual and actual way with each other, and not just if you pick up certain skill gems whatsoever, just by logically applying them. Sure, if I put fire on the ground and I put a whirlwind on it, the whirlwind might suck in the fire or the ice and turn into an ice storm, and you know what I mean, magic. All of this wrapped up together has essentially made Diablo players really tired of the game they were actually looking forward to and excited for. I still enjoy playing the game, and I'm looking forward to a bright future. But I'll also be honest, I'm very excited for Path of Exile in the middle of the year when the closed beta starts, and I'll try to get in there to test out PoE 2. And if it releases next year, and is so much better than what Diablo has to offer, you'll never see me play a single second of Diablo again. But Diablo also has 3-4 seasons this year to kind of make up for what's been lacking, and they really get to make up hardcore for it. How are you feeling? What are your vibes? Which game are you playing, or are you even playing two? Are you even playing both? Here's me, for example, checking out Path of Exile as a beginner, and also taking a peek at what Diablo 3 used to offer us in comparison to Diablo 4.